Good evening. You're about to watch a series of short horror stories written by yours truly. I am Sky Ravelis, writer and enthusiast of dark fiction. The video you are about to watch is intended for mature audiences. If you are intrigued by what you see, then subscribe and join the Darkling Fellowship, won't you? But enough talk. It's story time. The occult was his obsession. Deep into the darkest hours of the night, Samuel Weather would indulge in his studies of suffering and of the abyss. He would frequent dark alleyways and shady shops, as if they were his collective church. He worshipped the demented tomes he purchased from them, these tomes of human flesh, teachings written in blood, and artifacts from the damned decorated the walls of his abode. He had a strange sense of comfort from them. As dark as the merchants were that he had seen, void of earthly love and humanity, his kind of people, he could still see their souls in the reflections of their eyes. This shop was different, however. There were no ocular reflections, just void black. Their sharp white teeth had almost seemed to glow in comparison, other than the stains of blood that could be seen as they all grinned at him. Welcome to our humble shop. What is it you seek? Sam felt an odd sense of foreboding, but he felt right at home just the same. With a bit of a chuckle, he only responded with one word. Power. And at that, perhaps it was just a trick of the light, but it almost seemed like there was a brief, ominous shine in their eyes. You want power? Well, we are hiring an apprentice if you are interested. There is a small price, however. Should you join us, you will resemble what you see, and from this earth, you may never leave. I was like you once, but joining the damned was the best decision I've ever made. Besides, you're already practically one of us as it is. Sam could hardly hide his excitement. At long last, he would be welcome somewhere where he would not make people feel a sense of unease just by him being around them. He had found a master to take him as an apprentice, and the only price was his appearance and perhaps his mortality. If I look like you, will I be immortal? The grins became even wider in the darkness. If you can subject yourself to the pain, I will gladly sign immortality into your contract. Arrangements were made, and both parties signed the contract in blood. His dreams were coming true. He would no longer feel like an outsider. He would give up his worthless human life and become something more. I'm ready. I'm ready to be your apprentice, master. His head bowed in respect. Samuel did not see the look of pride and sadism on his master's face before what happened next. Then it's time. Samuel could feel thousands upon thousands of legs crawling upon him in groups of 8. In a combination of suffering and masochistic ecstasy, he screamed and moaned as they crawled under his skin and to every orifice. His screams soon became muffled as he gargled his own blood, and then ceased entirely as they ripped out his teeth and eyes. Once the process was done, the shopkeeper looked pleased. Samuel Weather lay seemingly dead on his knees with scraps of tattered clothing barely hanging on and covering nothing. Dignity and modesty gone, he was covered in all sorts of his own body fluids, including his blood, which was now as dark as the empty holes in his skull that once contained his eyes. Nothing about this was natural. In a few moments, there was a faint glimpse of light which shone in his new eyes. His teeth were as sharp as the ones that smiled back at him with pride. A hand reached down to him to help him to his feet, and with this gesture, the filth and grime of his dark baptism were gone. His master swooped him into an embrace and welcomed him almost like a son. His newfound brothers in darkness patted him on the back and welcomed him among their own. In his wickedness, Sam was finally rescued from a world in which he didn't belong. That's like I told you. You were already basically one of us. The spiders just had to remove you from your human shell. At these words, Samuel smiled bashfully, feeling somewhat silly that he had forgotten what he was for so long. Be more careful on future assignments, and next time you get trapped in a human vessel, don't forget to ask the spiders to bring you back home.
This isn't simply a matter of insanity. I refuse to believe that 8 people died this way just because they went crazy. 8 victims. 8 poor souls found covered in lacerations, all written off as suicide. Time of death, 9:44 p.m. Cause of death, automutilation with a pair of scissors.
8 autopsies, with slight differences between them, but all sharing these key factors. These findings were a blight on the psyche of head detective Keiji Hasami. He reviewed their details over and over in his head, now going on 24 hours without sleep. Ichi Sakura, covered in lacerations by a pair of gardening shears. Time of death, 9:44 p.m. Automutilation. Female, 29 years old. Ame Kurenai. Same weapon, same time, same method. Automutilation. Also female, 29 years old. Keigo Ryorinin. Also 9:44 p.m. Also automutilation, but male, 19 years old. The list continued with the other 5 victims, various ages and genders, but all dead at 9:44 p.m. with their choice of a pair of scissors. There was one final detail, however, that our team set aside at first as a coincidence. The autopsies confirmed extreme cases of insomnia. All victims had been awake for at least 72 hours. At that stage of sleep-deprived delirium, none of the victims would have known what was a dream and what was real. 38 years of life, 4 years as the head police detective in Yokohama, Kanagawa, Japan, and 7 years as an officer before that, and KG had never seen something as disturbing as this. Another night without sleep, haunted by the details of this case, and the photos of the mutilated bodies, sliced and eviscerated, on morbid display in the evidence room. KG was considering giving up. He could officially close the case by calling it a collection of suicides, but the similarities were too obvious to let this go. He had now been awake 48 hours, then 53, then 62, until he lay in his bed at 7:43 p.m., wanting nothing more than to fall asleep. He couldn't meditate, couldn't focus, couldn't scream. His muscles started spasming uncontrollably, and he put his head in his hands and cried out of frustration, terrified that he might be next. The clock on his nightstand read 8:43 p.m. But how? It was just 7:43. He only blinked. How had an hour already gone by? He looked at the clock again, and it read 10:45 p.m. Had he avoided death? 9:44 p.m. had come and gone. That was the final straw. Tomorrow he would close the case and write it off as a series of suicides. His heart and his head couldn't take the stress anymore. All he wanted to do was sleep. He got his wish, but at the cost of never waking up again.
What time is it? What time is it? It's time. It's time. I think I overdid it. Why? How? Somebody save me.
He screamed inside his head, but no one could hear him. The clock that had read 10:45 wasn't real. It was 9:44 p.m., and he was in the bathroom with a pair of hair-cutting shears.
What time is it? What time is it? How did this happen? What was I doing? Did I become a photograph? Something worse? This is a nightmare, right? Where am I? Who am I? What am I? This isn't reality. This can't be reality.
Dead on his bathroom floor, thoroughly sliced and eviscerated by his own trembling hands, lay KG. The case was closed, conveniently called a series of suicides, but the reality was this case was too dangerous to leave open. All we could do was pray that no more victims were claimed, and that the details faded away into oblivion. KG's poor daughter, the one who found him, was victim number 10. And my entire investigation team is dead. The news outlets have collectively already lost 3 journalists, and reporting the mysterious case of the bloody scissors is forbidden. All evidence has been shredded, and it seems that even thinking about what happened here in Yokohama is enough to ensure that you meet the same terrible end. I left my wife this note, but had I known any better, I would have left town. Had I still had my wits about me, I would have kissed her goodbye and never returned. But even post-mortem, hindsight is 20/20. She died 72 hours after finding my corpse. The note read, "If you are reading this, it is too late for me. The case has driven me to insanity, and I have taken my life like the other victims. Should I survive, I will destroy this note before you see it. Should I die, just know that I love you. Sincerely, Reiji Mukuro." just to be safe. My phone was off, and I truly thought I had nothing to worry about. But I didn't know that my wife had taken up a new sewing project. I wish I had known so I could have removed her supplies. I didn't know that time still counted, even without clocks to look at. And I wish I had known how easy it was for me to find my wife's new fabric scissors at 9:44 p.m. and exactly 72 hours without sleep.
Oh God! Somebody stop the machine! Somebody stop the machine! Somebody stop the machine!
I think I'm gonna be sick. Happiness was fleeting. He had no idea his life would be pulled apart. His name was Phineas Cage. A father of two, and a loving husband, who worked in a candy factory that was most well known for its various sorts and flavors of taffy. A man named Keigo Takashi was the factory owner, a wretched waste of life who was universally disliked by all who worked for him. Although he would act unbothered, he was alone in this world, and this solitude hurt. And he would never say it, but he was envious of Phineas Cage. Phineas was well liked and had a beautiful wife and two children who would visit him at work from time to time. He was the only one the other workers would listen to. They simply humored Mr. Takashi because they worked for him, but they would never go the extra mile for him like they would for Phineas. Because of this, to Mr. Takashi, Phineas Cage was nothing more than a threat. One night, in a fit of hysteria, after what had felt like a fever dream, he awoke with one thing on his mind. Phineas Cage must die. I've worked too hard to earn my place here, to be usurped by a nobody. The obsession and madness only amplified as he formulated a plan. I own a factory. Killing him in a tragic accident should be no problem. I just have to find a way to turn off the cameras by whichever machines I choose. And that is easily done. There's nothing a little bribe to the security chain can't fix. The real question is how I am going to make it look like an accident. The desperate and wicked gears in his head started twisting and whirling as he planned his first murder with glee. Meanwhile, Phineas had just finished reading a bedtime story to his children and was laying in bed, with his wife completely unaware of the horrible fate that awaited him. He slept without trouble and kissed her good morning without a care in the world. He ate breakfast with his family and said goodbye to his two daughters, wishing them a good day at school. He kissed his wife goodbye for what he was unaware would be the last time, and headed to the factory, blissfully unaware that a trap had already been set, and that he was about to die. He punched in and walked over to his machine. He climbed up to his usual post, but before he could reach the controls, his foot slipped on a mysterious liquid, flinging him helplessly over the balcony and onto the conveyor belt below. It all seemed to happen in a mere instant, and he was left disoriented from the fall. Before he could recover, the conveyor belt somehow switched into its highest velocity, now in the process of rapidly launching him into the taffy puller at the end of the production line. His terrified screams did nothing to save him from what happened next. His coworkers were frantically scrambling about, trying to find an emergency override to stop the machine as they saw poor Phineas cage in absolute terror on the way to his doom. It was no use. The emergency controls were jammed, and despite their best efforts, one of the sharp blades on this machine found purchase in Phineas's skull. It launched straight through the prefrontal cortex, and then with a sickening motion, the machine proceeded to pull at his brain as if it were taffy. He was dead on impact. There was no suffering from the killing blow, or from the rest of the machine parts gutting him while turning the batch of taffy that was once a lovely bubblegum pink into a sickening shade of crimson red. The workplace was filled with screams. Their desperate cries were all in vain. The machine stopped only when the job was done, and only when Phineas's body was completely destroyed. Only then had the culprit arrived, seemingly out of breath.
Mr. Takashi, where were you? Phineas is dead. There has been a terrible accident,
said one of the workers as they desperately were trying not to hurl from seeing the grotesque display.
I know. I saw the fall from my office. I tried to stop it, but nothing was working. I first ran to the machine to stop a directory, but the lever was stuck in place. Then I ran to the main controls when I heard him scream, but they were overheating. Because the machine was somehow at the maximum velocity. Finally, as a last resort, I booked it to the emergency shutdown to stop production completely, but I was too late. I couldn't save him. No matter what I tried, Phineas is dead.
Several months passed before the factory was up and running again. The tainted taffy batches were discarded, and emergency financial aid was offered to all employees as they were out of work. Mr. Takashi now had every excuse to hire new workers. New safeguards were installed over the balcony to ensure that this would never happen again, and what could be salvaged of Phineas's body was retrieved so that he could receive a proper burial. Mr. Takashi was proud of himself. The authorities declared it was a freak accident. He had gotten away with murder. He could finally be free of all his former subordinates, or at least he could be free of most of them. Phineas's body may have been gone, but not his vengeful spirit. He knew what Mr. Takashi did and didn't do, and he knew that he lost his life because of him. Phineas was not an angry person in life, but that blade to his skull caused a personality change as it pierced through. His spirit resembled the product of what was used to kill him, and Mr. Takashi was blissfully unaware that his murder victim, who had recently developed a lust for his blood, was coming for him.
Skull for skull, pulp for pulp. Madness ensue. It's time. His wife and kids were still in mourning. Ever since the tragic death of Phineas Cage via the taffy puller, life had been hard for them. He still visited them from time to time to try to regain some of his past humanity, but nothing helped. His desires had been warped, and he wanted nothing less than the life of Mr. Takashi. He could not move on until he had his revenge. The bastard's days were numbered. Phineas was not a quiet victim. The wind howled ominously against the walls of a different home. Keigo Takashi was sitting in his living room with a gentle fire burning and casting a gentle orange light upon his visage. He stared at the fire entranced and mortified, struck with guilt for what he had done as the wind outside screamed at him to atone. He put the fire out, and beyond exhausted from all his regrets, he retired to his room. He lay awake praying for the racing, condemning, and berating thoughts to stop.
Murderer, liar, falsifier, repeat, homewrecker, killer, coward, repeat.
Over and over again, these angry voices screaming in his head were driving him to madness. Make it stop! He screamed before bashing his skull against the headboard of his bed. That silenced his thoughts for a moment, but then he realized what he had done. His once pearly white sheets were being stained by the unending flow of blood from his head. He started spasming profusely as he saw the familiar crimson pour onto his sheets and out of his hands like an unending macabre flood. The crimson on white was too similar to the crimson on pink from the murder of Phineas. He screamed out of hysteria and started looking for his old victim. He knew the ghost was there. Where are you? I know you're here! He stumbled a few steps forward, laughing from sheer disbelief and insanity. Is it you trying to tell me to repent? You here to kill me like I killed you? Talk to me, Phineas! No need to hide! I can't catch you if you're already dead! Phineas was indeed there. He was buying his time, planning the kill just like his killer. Show yourself! Takashi screamed as he lost even more blood, his voice hoarse from the frantic shouting. Enough games! Just end me! From the darkness came a voice, a fusion of two voices of an inhuman nature, distorted by pain, rage, torment, and resentment, spoke with undertones of what was once a man.
Do you really think your fragile-hearted mind can take it?
The dead man appeared, and the dying man cowered before this wraith of his own design.
Afraid of that work. Can't if I'm already dead. But just because I'm already dead.
Desperately trying to get away, Takashi tried fleeing as fast as the severe blood loss would let him, but he was too weak to run, so he fell to his knees. Any way he crawled, Phineas would appear ready to crush his skull. His existence was scorned, his mercy was depleted, his eyes showed he was ready to kill. Lightning struck, signaling the hunt, as Phineas launched himself at Tagashi with supernatural speed. Before he could let out a scream, Takashi's skull was smashed to a bloody pulp and splinters of bone against an unforgiving wall. Now a ghost of himself, Takashi looked at this terrifying entity he created. More precisely, he was looking up as Phineas was dragging him across his living room floor. He let out a haunting, terrified, spectral scream. But Phineas paid him no mind. As the fireplace ignited with a natural flame, he threw the ghost of Tagashi into it, incinerating what remained of his worthless existence. Phineas stood there a brief moment, calming down and with a cold sadness in his eyes. The deed was done, and without any emotion, he faded away from this mortal plane, eager to get away from this tainted life. But little did he know that his very essence was gone. A dark ritual was happening at that very moment that would leave him condemned to become a sort of eldritch god. With his corrupted influence, the thinning was about to begin. Remember, your death is necessary, yet honorable. State your worst fear truthfully, for if you lie, no honor or peace after death awaits you. When the 10th person states their fear, we will send you to the realm. We would be listening. Don't break your cover. Once you leave this earthly plane, you know what to do. He's gaining his strength. The blood of 9 lives should do it. Start with 4, then kill 4 more, before killing the last. Your life must then end when you return, and it must be done with a pair of scissors. Signal us in your mind when you are ready to return, and we will make the necessary preparations for your death.
Everything is nice. Everything is calm. Everything is peaceful until you're gone.
10 friends, 1 traitor. 9 robed cultists were in a secret room underneath the house. Their identities were hidden by shadow, but their leader spoke in a decrepit voice, as if he were nearly dead. Robert Smith, Samantha Hall, George Hanabayashi, Stephen Whittaker, Klaus Felder, Elizabeth Watson, Carrie Goldstein, Louis Claw, Leo Junglee, and Mizu Hanamichi were all hanging out upstairs watching laughing and eating popcorn. Then one of the friends asked a fateful question. Hey guys, in the spirit of the movies we're watching, what would you say is your biggest fear? I'll go first. Mine is failure. I'm terrified of not amounting to anything in life, you know? This was surprising. The traitor did not initiate the conversation, but instead, it was Robert Smith. The cultists and the traitor made note of this.
That makes sense. But that's so weird. Because mine is the opposite. I'm afraid of success. With success comes change. And this all terrifies me. I'm actually working it out in therapy. How about you, Sam? Well, actually, I'm afraid of success too. I'm glad I'm not the only one, but it still sucks, my dude. Let's go around, clockwise, I guess. So, Carrie, you're next. What's your biggest fear?
Carrie shied a bit into herself for a moment, but then she sighed.
I guess I'm afraid of dying in general. The idea of dying and traversing into the great unknown terrifies me.
That was friend number 4. Group 1 was done, and Group 2 was next. The cultists were surprised by the order in which they shared their fears, but the plan carried on regardless.
This got too real. I'm also afraid of death, but more specifically, drowning. It's actually why I stay away from water. How about you, Liz? This may be a bit of a downer, but I'm afraid of dying alone. Oh, hon. Do you need a hug? You're with friends. Try not to think about loneliness. Thanks, Leo. I'll gladly take a hug. Okay, thanks for that. Anyway, Leo, what's yours? Mine is getting kidnapped. The idea of being taken hostage helplessly terrifies me more than anything. That gave me chills. Mine is somewhat similar. I'm afraid of getting stranded somewhere and left to die. Alright, George, you're up.
Group 2 just finished. Just 2 more friends to go.
I have trust issues that I've been working on. Still, at this point in my life, my greatest fear is one of my friends betraying me and it costing me my life in the process. Alright, Lewis, last one. Alright, I'll share mine. And then, let's change topic. If we're all trying to feel scared for the movies to be more effective, then it worked. But all this talk of fear and death is completely messing with the good vibes. Anyway, my biggest fear is to suffer a painful death. I try not to think about it, but I want to go peacefully, unaware, and without pain, like in my sleep, for example. The idea of suffering, like slowly bleeding out or burning alive, terrifies me. It's one thing to see it in a movie, but to witness it or experience it in real life would be literal hell. But enough about that. What should we watch next?
The mood lightened as they discussed happier topics, but the dark plan was still in motion. The order was off, but the 10th person had finally shared. The traitor was ready, and the cultists could begin the ritual. Their words echoed in the the traitor's mind.
You know what to do. You must realize their worst fears as well as your own. Time works differently there. Anyone left in that realm is as good as gone. Your cover must not be blown, and you must be the last one to die. Keep your guard up, act the part, and don't raise their suspicions. You must die here, not there. If you die there, all is lost. We are all doomed, and you bring forth Armageddon. You've trained your whole life for this, and you've come so far. Make us proud.
As these words faded into silence, the room went black. What at first it seemed like the power went out became more terrifying as the surrounding walls were ripped away from reality. The feeling of earthquakes in the dark and the eldritch sounds of their reality being ripped to shreds terrified the friends as they all screamed in unison. They couldn't understand what was going on. This felt like the twisted plot of an anime or video game. It couldn't be real, but it was. When the maddening ripping and quaking of space and time had ceased, they found themselves in a realm of true darkness. And then suddenly, a light appeared. The only light that could be seen was shining in the near distance, beckoning them to it. They reached out for each other in the dark, calling out names and trying to hold hands as not to get separated. 9 friends were staying close together, but they couldn't find Lewis. Curious about the light in front of them, they all walked towards it in unison. As the friends got closer, they could hear a sound that threw them into a desperate panic and filled their hearts with even more fear. This place seemed to devour all sound, but as they drew nearer, they could hear his screams. Some friends separated from the group, and others held even tighter onto each other as they ran towards the unmistakable suffering screams and cries of Lewis. The light source was his body, nailed to a wooden cross and set ablaze. He was hopelessly bleeding profusely and burning alive. The traitor had realized his worst fear. Lewis was suffering an agonizing death. By the time the friends were able to reach the cross, his screams had died out, and so had Lewis. 9 friends remained.
Everything is
What are you doing?
Everything is gone.
Hey, what are you? Ow!
Everything is peaceful until you're
Ow!
gone.
They started freaking out. Some of them were hyperventilating, and several were screaming and crying. The smells of burning flesh and charred wood permeated the stale, oppressive air.
What the f*** going on here? Who's doing this?
But just as he said these words, Sam let out another scream and started bawling her eyes out as she saw the lifeless body of Rob. His skull was caved in, lying face down just before the site of the cross. In a twisted sense of irony, he was killed before learning what had happened to Lewis. The thing that he had feared the most had come to pass. Rob had died before he could amount to anything. 8 friends remained. As everyone ran towards Sam to see why she was screaming, George stayed behind to observe the scene. He thought he would be able to see the next murder take place, but the traitor had been training their whole life for this, and knew this realm like the back of their hand. The traitor stepped away from the group and quickly cloaked themselves with darkness before appearing directly behind George, all in one quick motion. They kissed him on the cheek, and then silenced him with a kiss on the lips as he turned around to make eye contact, while they stabbed a dagger into his back. As the breath left his lungs, they slipped back into the cover of darkness, bringing the corpse of George with them. His worst fear had been realized, as he was fatally betrayed by a friend. His body was left in the shadows, and then the traitor rejoined the rest of the group before anyone could notice they were missing. 7 friends remained. After everyone was done saying their goodbyes, most of them started heading back towards the one light source. They didn't want to go too far into the dark. Although it was macabre, it was better to remain in the light. Leo insisted on staying with Rob's body a bit longer. Those two were always close, and they regularly spent time together without the rest of the friend group. Only Liz knew this, but Rob and Leo were secretly a couple. Leo was planning on making it official. Once Rob felt ready to be open about his sexuality, he mourned the fact that he would never get the chance, and cried over the corpse of his secret lover. The traitor had to be quick, for they knew that once the others had noticed George was missing, everyone would be on their guard, and there would be no more easy targets. They would instead remain in pairs and groups. But the traitor was prepared for this to happen. The killings had to continue. They hid in the darkness again, and as he buried his head in the chest of his lost love,
feeling completely broken and numb. They took advantage of his vulnerability and gagged him before putting a sack over his head while dragging him off swiftly into the shadows. Out of sight, they tied him up and left him for dead, with a heavy heart and tears streaming down his face. He was gone before too long. Time works differently here, and the darkness drains the life out of its victims. He did not know the secrets of how to safely walk in the shadows, so he was doomed from the moment he was kidnapped. His worst fear was realized, but just like George, his dead body remained undiscovered. 6 friends remained, and the first group of 4 was gone.
Everything is
What are you doing?
is gone.
Hey, what are you? Ow!
Everything is peaceful until you're
Ow! Ah!
gone.
The traitor signaled this to the cultists in their mind, and they were pleased that everything was going according to plan. Once again using the shadows as cover, they quickly rejoined the group before anyone could notice the traitor was missing.
Where's George? He was just here.
Where's Leo? He stayed behind a bit longer with Rob.
They didn't just wander off, did they?
No way. If you ask me, Sam is the one behind this. Me? How dare you? Why would you say such a thing? Because you're the first one who saw Rob's dead body. You screamed when you saw it, and you're the one who noticed Leo was gone. That just seems too convenient. I'm not a killer and I'll prove it to you. I'll go find Leo and George.
Wait, Sam! Steve didn't mean it! He's just scared and lashing out! Come back! You don't have to do this!
But it was too late. Sam ran off into the shadows, and as she faded from their line of vision, she faded from this life as well. 5 friends remained, but the fates of 3 were unknown to them. Not letting their guard down, the 5 remaining friends sat on the ground in the light of the burning crucifixion. Fire seemed to behave differently here. It was still just as bright as it had been at its debut during the horrific display. Everyone was exhausted, and the unnatural concept of time only intensified this. Everyone was desperately trying to stay awake, terrified of what would happen if they closed their eyes. Despite their best efforts, the 5 friends drifted off to sleep. But only 4 friends stayed asleep. The traitor was immune to the realm's aura of fatigue, and was merely imitating the others. Such immunity was a major part of the training they had been doing their whole life. As the other friends slept, the traitor gathered the corpses of Sam, Leo, and George and put them in plain sight. Sam's fear of success had been realized. Her death was proof that she wasn't the killer, and as promised, she found George and Leo, just not in life. The traitor then went back to their spot and pretended once again to be asleep. When the other friends awoke, they would see the 3 corpses of those who they had thought were missing. Now, without a shadow of a doubt, there was proof that only 5 friends remained. As they awoke, they screamed in unison at the sight of 3 new dead bodies, and the traitor masterfully joined in.
Something's hunting us, and we're sitting ducks here. We can't see shit in the darkness, so we'd be even worse off out there. Something's taking us out like it's a game, and there's nothing we can do about it.
At that exact moment, from an unknown force, Mizu was pulled away screaming into the darkness.
Mizu!
Then shortly after, the same happened to Steve.
Steve, no!
Liz started hyperventilating again, and for a brief moment, nothing happened. Until suddenly, without warning, a large halberd shot out from the darkness, piercing through Carrie's heart and killing her on impact. Whatever was holding the spear then yanked her corpse away from the light, leaving the 2 remaining friends screaming the loudest either of them had ever screamed in their lives. Carrie's worst fear was realized as she met her demise. 4 friends remained. 2 were missing.
Everything is nice.
What are you doing?
Everything is cold.
Hey, what are you? Ow!
Everything is peaceful until you're
Ow! Ah!
gone.
George. My God.
Klaus and Liz stopped screaming and huddled close together, crying softly in each other's arms. There was a bit of an eerie quiet for a short while, and they were able to control their breathing and start to calm down. They found comfort in each other's friendly embrace, and were able to find a little bit of peace that they had been lacking for quite a while. But this ended when a shadowy figure jumped out of the darkness and lunged forward to rip Klaus out of her arms. They as he fought to stay, but it was no use. He was dragged away, screaming into the darkness, to rejoin the ranks of his missing friends. 4 friends remained, but 3 were missing. They sat on the illuminated ground, hugging their knees and crying into them. She was all alone. All was mostly quiet, but far from peaceful. She was terrified, too afraid to move and too afraid to stand up or even to open her eyes, as she sobbed while feebly trying to comfort herself. All was mostly still, except for her muffled sobbing, the soft cracking of the fire burning behind her, and her own heartbeat, until a gurgling noise pierced through the silence. It wasn't just gurgling, it was gurgling, profuse choking, and what sounded like water forcefully hitting the ground somewhere in the darkness. The choking was becoming more severe. The gurgling was mixed with choked screams, and the water was falling even harder, until it stopped. The gurgling was gone. The choking had ceased. The muffled screams were no more, and for a while longer, all was despicably quiet, for the most part. The fire crackled softly, and her breathing slowed again, but all was far from peaceful. Then there was another soft thud that broke the silence, as the newly drowned corpse of Klaus was added to the pile. Liz let out a startled scream, but it was a much quicker one this time, as she then broke into tears of grief and hopelessness. She sat all alone in the open, crying to herself profusely, and hyperventilating yet again. Klaus's worst fear had been realized as he drowned on the dark, unforgiving floor. 3 friends remained, but 2 were missing. Really struggling to calm down this time, Liz passed out due to stress. Meanwhile, Steve was left all alone in the dark. His legs were free, but he was blindfolded, and his hands were tied behind his back. He was left to roam helplessly and far away from the scene of the burning cross, when no one could hear him scream. The darkness was draining his life essence, and his screams became more and more feeble, until he couldn't scream at all. His worst fear had come true, and he died stranded in this otherworldly abyss. 2 friends remained. 1 was missing. Group 2 was gone, and the cultists were pleased as Mizu Hanamichi informed them that the deed was almost done. She had successfully killed 8 of her friends.
As Liz awoke, she saw that Steve's body had been added to the pile. She was exhausted. She couldn't scream. She barely had the energy to cry. Lewis's body burned behind her. Rob's body, George's body, and Leo's body lay in front of her, and Sam's body was next to theirs. To her left was the impaled corpse of Carrie, propped up on the halberd which killed her, and Klaus's drowned, lifeless body was propped up against her. Liz was terrified, but also exhausted and numb. She accepted her fate. In the brief calm, she thought back to the movie night, and then to this series of horrible events. As she thought about how each of her friends had died, she realized that each friend had died exactly how they were afraid to go.
Hey guys, the spirit of the movies we're watching, what would you say is your biggest fear? I'll go first. Mine is fear. I'm terrified about anything in life right now.
Rob died right away, and he was afraid of failure and never amounting to anything.
Anyway, my biggest fear is to suffer a painful death. I try not to think about it, but I want to go peacefully anywhere and without pain, like in my sleep, for example. The idea of suffering, like slowly bleeding out or burning alive, terrifies me.
Lewis was afraid to suffer. When he died, and he listed 2 examples that he feared, and both of them happened to him.
I have trust issues that I've been working on. Still, at this point in my life, my greatest fear is one of my friends betraying me and it costing me my life in the process.
She looked up and saw that George was face down with a large knife wound in his back.
Wait, that means someone betrayed him. But who?
She continued, and Mizu was watching in the darkness. The words of the cultists were echoing in her mind.
Your must be brutal, and you must be the last one to die.
She would have to fake her own death. Mizu screamed a blood-curdling scream, and slowed her pulse so that Liz could not feel it. She waited a few moments before throwing herself on top of Sam. She played dead, but to Liz's knowledge, she wasn't pretending. 2 friends remained. One was quietly waiting.
What are you doing? Hey, what are you out?
Everything is peaceful until
Liz looked up at what she thought was Mizu's dead body, and cried the remainder of her tears, but much weaker this time. She then continued to think about the deaths of her friends, hoping to prepare herself for how she was about to die.
Maybe this realm takes control of people if it needs to. And that would explain the betrayal. Maybe Sam really was the traitor in the George scenario, since she was the one who noticed his body was missing.
Mizu still lay in wait, silently listening and waiting for her time to strike.
So this realm can take control if it needs to, in order to realize its victims' worst fears. My head is spinning. I can't remember what I said. I'm so scared right now that I don't have just one worst fear anymore. I'm afraid of everything.
She took a deep breath and steeled herself before continuing.
I have to remember so I can be ready.
Mine is getting kidnapped. The idea of being taken hostage helplessly terrifies me more than anything.
She looked up at Leo's body and saw that he was tied up with a burlap sack over his head.
Alright, so Leo was kidnapped. But what was Sam afraid of?
She remembered Sam's final words.
I'm not a killer and I'll prove it to you. I'll go find Leo and George.
Her fear was success. She must have died right after she found Leo and George. Like she said she was going to.
She looked at Carrie's impaled body.
I guess I'm afraid of dying in general. The idea of dying and traversing into the great unknown terrifies me.
Klaus's body leaned up against it.
This got too real. I'm also afraid of death, but more specifically, drowning. It's actually why I stay away from water.
Carrie's fear was death in general, so her death was the realm's choice. And Klaus was afraid of water, which is why he's drenched, and why I heard him drown.
Lastly, she looked at Steve and Misu's bodies and saw that Steve's hands were tied behind his back and a blindfold was over his eyes.
Mine is somewhat similar. I'm afraid of getting stranded somewhere and left to die.
While Misu's were wide open.
I'm afraid of success. With success comes change. And this all terrifies me.
It looks like Steve was left to wander in the dark, and his fear was to be stranded. And I heard Mizu scream before her corpse fell into the light. So I guess she found her way back and was killed for it, since her fear was success.
Mizu still lay in wait as Liz finally collected her thoughts and remembered what she said during the movie marathon.
This may be a bit of a downer, but I'm afraid of dying alone.
Finally, she understood what was going to happen now.
I'm going to be the last one to die here. No killer, no entity, just myself, all alone.
And with these words, Mizu heard just what she was waiting for. And using her connection to the realm, she extinguished the burning flame by simply lifting a finger.
You must realize there
This would have seemed like a mere trick of the light should Liz have been looking at Mizu. But Liz was silently sobbing, without tears, as she had shed them all while accepting her fate.
I wish we'd never shared our fears with each other at movie night.
And with that, the light from the flames finally died out, and with it, so too did the remainder of Liz's life essence. Her worst fear had been realized. Liz had died all alone. One friend remained. One friend quietly signaled the cultists in her mind. The traitor was ready to return home. Mizu Hanamichi was ready to die.
Shared our fears with each other at movie night.
I'm terrified of not amounting to anything in life, you know.
My biggest fear is to suffer a painful death. My greatest fear is one of my friends betraying me and it costing me my life in the process. The idea of being taken hostage helplessly terrifies me more than anything.
I'm afraid of success too. I guess I'm afraid of dying in general.
It's gotten too real. I'm also afraid of death, but more specifically, drowning.
I'm afraid of getting stranded somewhere and left to die. I'm afraid of dying alone. I'm afraid of success.
I wish we'd never shared our fears with each other at movie night.
Welcome back, Mizu Hanamichi. What should we say? Ame Kurenai.
Ame Kurenai. Same weapon, same time, same method. Auto-mutilation. Also female, 29 years old.
No need for false names anymore. You did well. Grab the scissors from the table over there and wait until we all leave before you do the deed. The garden under the full moon is where it must be done, and you must wait until precisely 9:44 p.m.
All dead at 9:44 p.m.
We'll see you soon, my dear, and we have plans for your friends as well.
The cultists took all evidence of their presence with them and cleaned up the living room as well. Each of them had said farewell to her with a warm embrace, all saying how proud they were. Once they were gone, she walked outside to the garden with shears in hand. The watch on her wrist read 9:04 p.m. She waited under the moon until it was time, while saying these words to herself before preparing to take her last breath. Every so often she would check her watch, but time seemed frozen.
Time works differently there. Anyone left in that mountain good as gone.
The autopsies confirmed extreme cases of insomnia. All victims had been awake for at least 72 hours. At that stage of sleep-deprived delirium, none of the victims would have known what was a dream and what was real.
I do not fear death, for this will not kill me. I fear success, because I fear what I'll become. But there was no other way. I must become a god. At precisely 9:44 p.m., I made the first slice, which killed me. I was already dead as my new form took control and possessed my body to mutilate itself. With laughter, one slice is all it takes from the scissors of fate. Then I can take control as a goddess of darkness. Each of the innocent lives I take represents a new thread to the tapestry. But the tapestry also requires human skin from corrupted lives. And several needles of the tortured are required to craft it. We started this ritual because Phineas Cage has already been reborn, but he is not at full strength.
A dark ritual was happening at that very moment that would leave him condemned to become a sort of eldritch god. With his corrupted influence, the thinning was about to begin.
The cultists, my family, had left to proceed with Phase 2. And while they did their part, I had some threads to collect in Yokohama, Japan.
It seems that even thinking about what happened here in Yokohama is enough to ensure that you meet the same terrible end.
But that was still not enough. I need more. My work is not done.
She was my granddaughter. She was born into this life against her will. She had no choice. First they killed my son. Now they have forced my granddaughter to kill herself. No matter how long it takes to stop them, I will kill them all. My dearest daughter, we will be reunited soon enough. But until then, I will be watching you closely. Ame Kurenai.